My name is Patricia Lane, and I was only 12 years old when everything in my life turned upside down. That morning started like any other day. Dad kissed my forehead, smiled gently, and left the house to head to the construction site. He was a site supervisor for a civil construction company in Oregon. I still clearly remember the denim jacket he wore and how he said, "I'll bring home your favorite pastry this afternoon." That was the last thing I ever heard from him. Mom didn't even look up when Dad walked out the door. Her eyes were glued to her phone, fingers scrawling endlessly like she was drowning in an infinite stream of news. That struck me as odd. They used to talk every morning, exchange warm glances. Lately, the silence between them had stretched longer, like a void I couldn't fill. By noon, while I was sitting in science class, the principal walked in. Her face was serious, but her eyes held a deep sympathy. I was called outside, not knowing what was happening. In the principal's office, my mom was already there. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup untouched, and her cold eyes looked at me like I was a stranger. "Your father is gone, Patricia," she said in a disturbingly calm voice. I froze. It felt like the air around me had disappeared. I screamed on the inside, but on the outside, all I could do was cry, choked and silent. Mom placed her hand lightly on my shoulder, patting it as if she were comforting an acquaintance, not the only daughter who had just lost her father. That night, I went up to my room early but couldn't sleep. I heard Mom on the phone downstairs. Her voice was low, but every word came through the thin walls of our house. "Actually, this might be a good opportunity," she said, pausing for a moment. "Being a widow is better than being divorced. At least I get to keep everything without sharing with lawyers." Then she laughed, a short, sharp laugh like a knife's edge. I couldn't believe my ears. My father had only been gone for a few hours, and yet my mother, the woman who had held his hand through years of marriage, was saying such things without an ounce of sorrow, without a single real tear. I sat on the stairs, my hand covering my mouth to stifle the sobs, my heart aching as if it were being crushed. The only one who sensed the truth was Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister. She didn't sob loudly at the funeral, didn't offer hollow condolences like the others. She just stood quietly in the backyard, shaking her head gently whenever someone hugged my mom and said, "Poor thing." Aunt Margaret had known all along. She'd seen how Mom treated Dad, the disdain in her words when he lost his job temporarily, the irritated glances when he came home late after overtime shifts, but no one wanted to believe it. My mother always appeared polished, knew just the right words to say to fool people. Only Aunt Margaret and I saw how everything was falling apart beneath the surface. After the funeral, Mom transformed. No longer tired or sorrowful, no more red eyes. She dressed more extravagantly, wore heavier makeup, and was constantly on the phone. I once caught her tearing up a family photo with Dad in it, then tossing it into the trash without a second thought. That time, I didn't cry. I just stood there, eyes dry, because even my tears seemed to understand there was no place left for them. I had lost the person I loved most, but what hurt more was realizing I never really had a mother. 4 months after the funeral, Mom casually announced she was remarrying. She didn't sit me down or ask how I felt. She stood in the kitchen, stirring her morning coffee, and said it as if she were announcing the weather. "Patricia, Daniel and I are getting married at the end of the month." I froze in place. The spoon in my hand dropped to the floor with a cold clang. Daniel Morrison, the man who had shown up at our house a few times after Dad passed. At first, he just came by to help Mom cope with her grief, but over time, he appeared more frequently, even bringing his 2 kids, Chase, 14, and Kayla, 11. Chase always looked at me like I was from another planet, while Kayla rarely spoke, just quietly assessed me head to toe whenever her mom signaled her. I used to think I was imagining it. I wasn't. The wedding was a private ceremony in a small garden outside Boise, Idaho. I had no role in the event, wasn't asked about the dress, seating, or even if I wanted to go. Mom simply handed me a pale pink dress, and coldly said, "Don't embarrass me." After the honeymoon, Daniel and his kids moved into my house, or rather, the house that used to belong to my dad. That's when everything changed, in ways I couldn't have imagined. Kayla was given my bedroom because, as Mom put it, she's a girl and she needs space to paint. I was moved to the attic, a cramped room with rough wooden walls and a single window that was jammed shut. Chase took over my dad's study, once filled with books and sketches. It became his game room. I protested, gently. Mom responded curtly, "You need to learn to share. The world doesn't revolve around you." Every night, dinner felt like a stage play where I was just an extra. Mom filled Kayla's plate, saved the last piece of chicken for Chase while I quietly ate cold salad. When I asked, "May I have some more potatoes?" she shrugged. "You've had enough." Weekend trips began. Camping, canoeing, national park visits. I was never invited. Mom explained, "You're not into outdoor activities. Stay home and watch the cat." So I stayed, with Ginger the cat, and the growing feeling of being left behind. I called Aunt Margaret more often. Nights at her house felt like breathing again. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me a warm blanket, a cup of hot cocoa, and listened in silence. Once, while I was stacking clothes in her room, she asked softly, "Are you okay with how things are at home?" I didn't know what to say. Some truths, once spoken, hurt more than when kept inside. I just bowed my head and mumbled, "At least, I have a real bedroom here." She squeezed my hand. Her eyes held no anger, no pity, just a deep understanding that made me want to cry. One Friday afternoon, I came home from school and saw Mom and Kayla sitting together in the living room. The table was covered with markers and drawing paper. They were laughing. Mom gently untangled Kayla's hair from her sweater, smiling like I didn't even exist. That image froze me at the doorway, my chest hollow. "Patricia, walk softer," Mom snapped. "Kayla needs to concentrate." I turned away and quietly climbed the stairs to the sweltering attic. No lock on the door, no one to check on me. Just me and the wind whistling through the jammed window. That night, I pulled out a small notebook and wrote my first line. "I will not be forgotten. Not like this." I started thinking about college when I turned 17. Late afternoons in the school library, I sat alone researching business schools, scholarship programs, and dreaming of a life I could finally control. A life where I wouldn't be shoved into attics or called the extra problem, in a family I never chose. One evening, while Mom was baking for Kayla's upcoming birthday party, I gathered my courage and stepped into the kitchen. The scent of butter and vanilla lingered in the air, clashing with the heaviness in my chest. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "I want to apply to the University of Minnesota. They have a great business program and I've almost finished my application." She stopped, turned to look at me, not with surprise or emotion, but with visible irritation. "Patricia, where do you think the money for college is going to come from?" She set the cake pan on the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. "Chase is starting senior year, Kayla's got real artistic talent, and I'm planning to enroll her in an art academy out of state. You need to be realistic." I bit my lip. "What about Dad's savings?" I remember he once said. Mom frowned and cut me off with a sigh. "Are you still stuck on that? Your father didn't leave anything. Whatever was in the savings account was used for hospital bills, the funeral, and living expenses all these years. Did you think food, clothes, and a roof over your head were free?" I stood frozen, not because of her answer, but because of how she said it. As if my very existence was a burden. Still, I didn't give up. That weekend, I went to Aunt Margaret's house as usual. She made peppermint tea and the cookies still smelled fresh from the oven. We sat on the porch swing where the late afternoon sunlight stretched across the lawn like a soft blanket. I told her everything, about the conversation with Mom, about my dream of going to college, and the lingering doubt I had about the money Dad once said was set aside for me. Aunt Margaret stayed silent for a moment, then stood up and went inside. I waited, clutching my now cold teacup. When she came back, she held a small old metal box, secured with a tiny latch. "I've been keeping this for 5 years," she said, her voice low but warm. "Before your father passed, he came to see me. He was worried. He said things were changing at home and he didn't want to take any risks." My eyes widened as she handed me the box. Inside was a thick envelope, sealed tightly with tape. My hands trembled as I opened it. A bank statement fell out, and my heart pounded. Over $72,000 in the account. The beneficiary, me. The assigned trustee, Margaret Lane. "Your dad had been putting money into that account for years," Aunt Margaret said, looking at me with love. "He didn't say why exactly, but when I heard he passed and saw how things changed with your mom, I knew why he did it." I was speechless, tears threatening to spill. Part of me wanted to break down, but another part felt a surge of strength. Dad hadn't abandoned me. Even when he was gone, he was still protecting me in the quietest way. "Don't tell your mother," Aunt Margaret warned, her voice firm. "If she finds out, she'll find a way to take it. From now on, you have to keep this completely secret." I nodded. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a luxury. That night, I sat by Aunt Margaret's window, moonlight reflecting off the bank document in my hands. Those cold numbers now held the deepest kind of love. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing for sure. I would fight for my future, and I would never let anyone, not even my mother, take that from me again. I kept the money a secret, just as Aunt Margaret told me to. During my senior year, I poured everything into school. Every morning, I woke up earlier than my alarm, did extra assignments, applied for scholarships, and practiced writing essays like my life depended on every word. In truth, it did. At school, Chase still made sarcastic remarks when I brought packed lunches or wore the same old jacket. "Don't worry, Patricia," he once sneered. "They still need cashiers." Kayla frequently posted pictures of the happy family online, pictures I was never in. I stayed silent, as always, because I knew I was preparing for something far greater than anything they could ever imagine. That spring, when I turned 18, I received my acceptance letter from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, majoring in business administration. I also earned a partial scholarship thanks to my grades and an essay about my determination to build a life on my own terms. I didn't show the acceptance letter to my mom. Instead, I quietly planned my departure, with Aunt Margaret's help and the money my dad had saved for me. 3 months later, I left the house where I had lived like a shadow. No farewell party, no hug. Mom just asked flatly, "Are you sure you can handle living on your own?" I smiled, nodded, and walked out the door, feeling as though I had just removed a weight I'd carried for years. College life wasn't easy, but I loved every moment of independence. I worked at a cafe near the dorms, joined academic clubs, and never passed up an internship opportunity. That's where I met Jessica Ward, a classmate whose personality was the opposite of mine. Bold, energetic, but incredibly kind. One time, while working on a marketing strategy project together, Jessica invited me to her house to prepare our presentation. I didn't expect the house to be a 3-story mansion in suburban Madison, and I certainly didn't expect her father to be Malcolm Ward, CEO of a well-known marketing firm called Ward & Cole Strategies. After our rehearsal, Mr. Ward overheard us practicing. He stepped into the room, nodded approvingly, and asked me a few questions about my market analysis. He didn't say much then, but a week later, Jessica handed me his business card and said, "My dad wants to meet you. I think he's looking for interns." That summer, I started my internship at Ward & Cole. At first, I handled small tasks, compiling data, assisting with events, making coffee. But I observed, learned, and stayed late whenever I could. When a senior employee suddenly left, I volunteered to finish her unfinished market report. That report caught Mr. Ward's attention. After graduation, I was offered a full-time position. I began as a market analyst. 4 years later, I became regional strategy lead. By year 6, I was promoted to Director of Strategic Development. At just 24 years old, every step was deliberate, each small win a brick laid in the foundation of my new life. I bought my first apartment in downtown Milwaukee. I picked out the furnishings myself. Minimalist, elegant, and nothing excessive. Then came the Mercedes-Benz GLC, a reward I gave myself after exceeding performance goals. But unlike Kayla or Chase, I didn't post photos for attention. I didn't need to. I only shared a few pictures with Aunt Margaret, the only one who knew my entire journey. She always replied, "Your father would be so proud." And I never once doubted you'd make it. I still keep a journal. Whenever I feel tired or uncertain, I open the old notebook, where Dad's handwriting is on the first page. No matter where you go, I believe you'll get to where you dream to be. Now, I'm there. The very place I once dreamed of, doubted, and fought to reach. I never returned to the old house. I hadn't heard a word from Mom, Chase, or Kayla in 6 years. Until one June morning when a strange message appeared in my voicemail, with a voice I couldn't mistake. "Patricia, it's Mom. I have something I want to talk to you about." The message came at 7 a.m., on the same day I was promoted to Regional Vice President at Ward & Cole. As I sipped my coffee on the balcony, watching Milwaukee awaken below, my phone buzzed with a simple notification. "Patricia, I'm having my 55th birthday party at Belle Reve Restaurant, Saturday, 7 p.m. You should be there. Don't make people think I didn't raise you right." No warm greeting, no explanation, just a cold demand. Exactly how she used to control my life when I was a child. Even the way she wrote "you should be there" made me laugh. Like nothing had happened all those years, like I was still stuck in the attic eating dinner alone. I planned to delete the message, but part of me, not to forgive, but to prove something, wanted to see the look on her face when she realized the daughter she once abandoned had grown up. That afternoon, I sat with Aunt Margaret in the living room, recounting the message with a smirk. She set her teacup down, watching me for a long moment. "Are you going to go?" I nodded. I don't want anything from her, but I think it's time she saw the truth she's been denying all these years. Aunt Margaret raised an eyebrow. "So, what are you going to give her?" I opened my phone and showed Aunt Margaret a confirmation email. A 3-month luxury vacation at a 6-star resort in Iceland, first-class tickets, full-service package. Total cost, $180,000. Aunt Margaret nearly dropped her glasses. "Goodness, Patricia!" I gave a soft smile. She'll never receive this trip. But I just want to see her reaction. Just once. On Saturday evening, I chose a simple black dress from a brand most people unfamiliar with fashion would mistake for something cheap. I took a taxi to Belle Rive, a fancy-looking restaurant, but I knew the truth. The food was average at best, and the price was inflated by chandeliers and background violin music. The private dining room was decorated with candles and elegant fake flowers. My mother sat in the center, her sequin dress sparkling, makeup flawless down to every detail. Next to her was Daniel, still as dull as ever. Chase and Kayla flanked them, beaming in designer outfits, acting like movie stars. When she saw me, Mom narrowed her eyes, then forced a social smile. "Oh, Patricia, you showed up on time. At least you still remember your manners." I didn't respond. I just smiled and walked toward an empty seat at the end of the table. The party unfolded like a stage play. Relatives gave ordinary gifts, which my mother praised like they were treasures. A scarf, a cosmetic set, a shopping voucher. Then it was Chase and Kayla's turn. They stood hand in hand, confidently presenting their gift like they were delivering a graduation speech. "Mom," Chase began, "Kayla and I saved up all year to get you something really special." Kayla held up her phone, showing a picture of a brand new massage chair already set up in the living room. Mom clutched her chest and feigned being overwhelmed. "Oh my, you two are the most thoughtful children in the world." Then her gaze drifted toward me. "And what about you, Patricia?" I'm not expecting much, maybe a card or a handkerchief. I calmly opened my handbag, took out a small blue box neatly wrapped with a white ribbon. I pushed it toward her. Just open it and see. She took the box and glanced at it like she was judging a last-minute bargain bin item. When she opened it and saw the slip of paper inside, she frowned. What is this? I sat up straight. A reservation confirmation for Aurora Blue Resort in Iceland. 3 weeks, full-service package, first-class tickets. That's my birthday gift to you. The room fell silent. Kayla dropped her spoon, Chase's eyes widened, and Daniel stopped chewing his cake. Mom looked at the paper, then at me. Are you joking? Where did you get the money for this? I smiled, my gaze steady. I am the Regional Development Vice President at Ward & Cole. I live downtown, and the taxi I took tonight was so I didn't have to worry about parking my new Lexus I bought last week. Her face froze. No more smiling, no more sarcasm. Only shock. I stood up, gently took the box back and placed it in my bag. But you're right, if you think this gift isn't valuable enough, I'll give it to someone who truly deserves it. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking clearly across the silent room. Outside the restaurant, the summer breeze brushed through my hair. I took out my phone and sent one message to Aunt Margaret. The trip to Iceland is yours. I left Belrive behind in a heavy silence, walking away from the stunned stares of my mother and the family, who never really saw me as one of them. That night, I didn't go straight home. I stopped by Aunt Margaret's, where the lights were still on and a cup of hot tea was already waiting, as if she had known exactly how the evening would unfold. I told her everything, the way my mother belittled the gift before opening it, her shock when she saw its real value, and what I said before leaving. Aunt Margaret didn't laugh, but her eyes shimmered with pride. You did what most people never dare to, place your own worth above fake approval. I nodded, feeling lighter. I don't need her apology. I just need her silence. But silence didn't come the way I hoped. The next morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Then a message arrived. Patricia, we need to talk. About last night. And about us. I didn't reply. An hour later, another call. This time from Daniel's number. I had forgotten he still used the same one. Then Kayla called. Chase sent a message. Mom is really upset. Maybe our little sister didn't need to go that far. Little sister. The phrase sounded so fake. I was never his sister, never treated like family. Yet now he used such a familiar tone, like the past never happened. That afternoon during a strategic meeting, my mother sent a long email titled in bold, "For the family." She claimed the party had been a misunderstanding, that I had overreacted, and that she wanted to start over if I truly wished to reconnect. But just a few lines later, the truth leaked out. She mentioned how Kayla really needs an internship at a reputable company to enhance her college applications, and how Chase has great business potential but needs guidance. Then, she added, if you know anyone hiring at your company, consider referring Chase. He has excellent leadership skills. I read the whole email without feeling anything, not anger, not sadness, just the sense that I was reading a shallow investment proposal, flowery language, but completely hollow. The next day, I blocked every number from my mother's family. I filtered their emails, I changed my social media privacy settings, and told our office security team that anyone with the last name Morrison should not be allowed in. Late that evening, Aunt Margaret called, her voice hesitant. Patricia, your mother came to my house this morning. I paused for a few seconds. What did she say? She wanted your address, said she had the right to see you, that a mother shouldn't be treated like a stranger by her own child. I told her she gave up that right a long time ago. I closed my eyes, imagining her standing on Aunt Margaret's porch, wearing her designer dress, makeup flawless, gripping her purse like she was bidding at an auction. Did she do anything outrageous? I asked. She did. She yelled in the street, accusing me of dividing the family, that I was selfish, and that everything she ever did was to help you succeed. I let out a quiet laugh. Succeed by locking me in an attic? I told her that. She went quiet for a while, then left, but Patricia, the look in her eyes, I think she's truly desperate this time. I didn't know what emotion I was feeling. Sadness? Pity? Or just the numbness of years of abandonment? But I knew one thing for sure. No amount of late tears could erase years of being forgotten. And coming back just for benefits could never be called love. That night, I sat alone on my sofa, gazing out at the city through my large window. I reopened the Iceland vacation email and updated the recipient's name. Margaret Lane. I added a small note. For the one woman who chose to stay, even when the world turned away. When I hit send, I wasn't just giving away a gift. I was closing a chapter of my life and stepping into the next one with my head held high. Margaret's trip to Iceland was scheduled for early September, right during the most breathtaking season of the Northern Lights. When I told her, she nearly dropped her glass. You're kidding, Patricia? Iceland? A 6-star resort? Oh my goodness, I've never even left this state. I smiled, laying the printed flight tickets and itinerary on the wooden kitchen table. No kidding. You deserve all the best things. And more. Aunt Margaret went quiet for a moment, then looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. One filled with unconditional love, pride, and deep gratitude. No fancy words, no tears. Just a warm squeeze of my hand, and it was enough. Since the night of my mother's birthday party, I had erased every trace of the past. Phone numbers, email addresses, even old belongings from the house. I had given them away or thrown them out. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't want to hold on to anything that reminded me of a place where I felt invisible. I focused on my work and on the relationships that truly mattered. I spent more time with Aunt Margaret, cooking together on weekends, taking morning walks around Lake Geneva every Sunday. Those seemingly simple things made me feel more loved than any empty words ever spoken by the woman who used to call herself my mother. A week before the trip, I scheduled a private car to pick Aunt Margaret up at the airport, hired a local guide so she could fully enjoy everything without worry, and even booked a full-body spa session at the hotel she'd be staying in, with a view that looked out to snow-covered mountains year-round. Aunt Margaret couldn't stop laughing as I listed the plans. You're turning me into royalty. I just smiled and said softly, I'm only giving back a small piece of what you gave me. During that time, I didn't receive any more messages or calls from my mother. Maybe she finally understood that this time I had truly closed the door. No more soft spots, no second chances. Her silence was the most valuable thing she had ever given me. The day before her departure, I gave Aunt Margaret a teal silk scarf, the color of the Northern Lights I had seen in pictures. She hugged me tightly, eyes glistening. Your father must be looking down and smiling. I nodded. I believed that, too. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights twinkling behind the glass window. I pulled out my old notebook, the one I started when I was just a girl banished to the attic, and read the first line I ever wrote. I will not be forgotten, not like this. Now, I added a new line below it. And I wasn't forgotten. I created my own place, right where I belong. I closed my eyes. I no longer felt heavy or bitter. Instead, I felt peace. Like I had finally taken off the weighty coat of the past. The next morning, I dropped Aunt Margaret off at the airport. She rolled her suitcase, the teal scarf wrapped around her neck, chattering about the weather in Reykjavik and whether she should eat breakfast on the plane or at the terminal. Before entering the security checkpoint, she looked back at me, her eyes gleaming like a child about to go to summer camp. You know, Patricia, I always hoped that one day you'd live up to your full potential, but I never imagined you'd be the one helping me live my own dream. I hugged her tightly. Because you were the first person who believed in me when no one else did. She walked away, her small figure gradually disappearing behind the line of passengers. I stood there for a while, then turned and walked out of the airport, my heart light. I didn't have a big, loud family or picture-perfect posts on social media, but I had one person who was always there for me, someone who chose me every single day, not for gain, not for appearances, but simply out of love. And sometimes just one person like that is enough to be called family. From a forgotten girl living quietly in an attic, I had risen and built a life I'm truly proud of. I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about those who choose to love and stand by you unconditionally. Success doesn't come from others' approval, but from daring to believe in your own worth. And sometimes, finding happiness means having the courage to let go of what once hurt you. What do you think about Patricia's story and her courageous choices? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartwarming and meaningful stories about family and life. The heavy rain pounded against the large glass windows of Knighton Enterprises, blending with the shouts echoing throughout the conference room. Useless! Charles Knighton's voice was as cold as steel. The file flew from his hand, the pages scattering across the marble floor. Do you have any idea how much your mistake could cost us? I stood across from him, gripping the edge of the table, my palms slick with sweat. The expansive room suddenly felt smaller, stifling and oppressive. Dad, I can fix this. The contract hasn't been signed yet, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Fix it? A cold laugh echoed from the end of the table. Ethan, my older brother, smirked. You almost sold our maritime division for half its actual value. Fix what? Do you think this is some kind of game? I've been working 80 hours a week, I said, my voice breaking. I just need a little more time to do what? Dad cut me off. Make more mistakes? You've humiliated this family. You think I'll give you another chance? Behind him, my mother appeared in a charcoal gray Chanel dress, her face flawless as if she'd just stepped off the cover of a magazine. She stood with her arms crossed, her expression as cold as ice. Charles, the board is waiting, she said, her tone flat. My father straightened his tie, his face suddenly blank like a mask. We'll talk later, he said, turning away and walking out of the conference room without another glance at me. The glass doors closed. The room fell eerily silent. I stood there, alone in the vast space where I once proudly thought I would inherit the family company. Now, all I had was Ethan's contemptuous stare. You know, Dad believed in you, he said, stepping closer, his voice a low whisper. He thought you could do something great. But now? You're just a useless little girl, always trying, but never good enough. I didn't respond. My throat tightened, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. That evening, I was summoned to my father's office. The room was dark, except for the single desk lamp casting a harsh glow. My father sat behind the old oak desk, his eyes fixed on me as if I were a stranger. You're fired, he said bluntly. My heart stopped. Dad, what are you saying? You're no longer with Knighton Enterprises. The board has lost confidence in you. Your contract will be terminated immediately. Why? It was just one mistake. I've been working nonstop. Make a mistake we cannot forgive, he interrupted, his voice slamming down like a gavel. You'll receive 6 months severance. After that, you're on your own. Your mother has arranged a position for you at your Uncle Victor's company in Seattle. Seattle? I shook my head, eyes wide with shock. I can't leave New York. This is my home. This is where I've built my entire career. What you want is irrelevant, my mother said, appearing in the doorway, her face devoid of emotion. The decision has been made. Your flight leaves tomorrow morning. And if I refuse? My father rose, buttoning his jacket. If you refuse, he said, his voice heavy and cold as a stone, then don't expect to get anything from this family. No severance, no connections, nothing. I stood there, watching them walk away. Their figures disappearing behind the heavy wooden door. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the sound of rain pounding against the windows. I looked down at my trembling hands, the emptiness spreading through me like a void. Family. They just disowned me over one mistake. And in that moment, I understood. From now on, I was on my own. That night, I sat alone in a cheap hotel room, the dim yellow light casting long shadows on the gray walls. The rain continued to pour outside the window, blending with the noise of the traffic below. I pulled my laptop from my bag, my hands still shaking from the confrontation with my parents. The screen lit up, displaying the familiar work interface. I opened the contract file that I had spent weeks preparing. The contract that my father and Ethan had used to push me out of Knighton Enterprises. My heart pounded as I scanned each line, each clause. But the more I read, the more I felt something was off. My eyes moved rapidly over the text, scrutinizing every word, every line. Clause 12.2, Maritime Division Sale Rights. This was the critical section of the contract, and the part where I supposedly made the fatal error. But something was different. I leaned in closer, eyes narrowing at the text. The font was different. It wasn't the same font I had used, and the phrasing, it didn't match my writing style. I opened the original file saved on my hard drive, pulling up the first draft of the contract I had created. Every line was meticulously written, every number precisely calculated. But the contract that had been presented to the board, the one that cost me my job, was completely different. Not just the font, not just the wording, but the numbers. The valuation of the Maritime Division had been significantly reduced, making it appear as though Knighton Enterprises was practically giving away a substantial asset for a fraction of its worth. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. My heart pounded, each beat echoing like a drum in my ears. "No way," I whispered. "Ethan, he had always resented me. From the day our father brought me into the company, he made it clear that he believed I was unworthy of being the next CEO. But why this contract? And how did he manage to alter the original file?" Then a realization hit me. IT department? Ethan was the only one with full access to the internal server. If he wanted to, he could easily access my files, alter the data, and make me look like a complete fool in front of the entire board. "It was him," I whispered, my eyes narrowing as the rage began to rise. "But why?" I leaned back against the chair, closing my eyes, trying to piece together the events. Ethan had always been jealous. When Dad brought me into Knighton Enterprises, he told me that I would one day inherit the CEO position. Ethan, of course, was furious. And now he had finally gotten what he wanted. He had taken me down, made me look incompetent, and secured our father's unwavering trust. But there was one thing he didn't know. I was never the kind to back down. The laptop screen remained illuminated, displaying every line of the forged contract. I clicked, opening the file's metadata. The author's name was still listed as mine, but when I scrolled down to the edit history, my heart skipped a beat. A modification was made at 2 a.m, 2 days before the board meeting, and the user who made that change, username Ethan. I clenched my jaw. He hadn't just destroyed my work. He was so confident he didn't even bother to erase the evidence. A surge of anger rose within me, stronger than the sound of the rain outside. He thought I would leave New York, disappear, and never come back. But he was wrong. I closed the laptop, stood up, and looked out the window. The streetlights shimmered through the rainy night like the last glimmers of a dark era. The doorbell rang just as I lifted the coffee cup to my lips. The cold Boston morning air still lingered, with fog draping over the tall buildings. I stood up and walked to the door. Before me stood an older man, tall and slender but still sturdy like an old oak tree. He wore a long dark brown coat, and his piercing blue eyes shone despite the deep lines etched into his face. Grandpa, I whispered, a mix of surprise and unease. Savannah. James Knighton stepped inside, his gaze fixed intently on me. We need to talk. My grandfather hadn't set foot in Boston since I left New York. The fact that he was here now sent a shiver down my spine. I closed the door and gestured for him to sit on the small sofa by the window. He placed a worn leather briefcase on the table. Do you know why I'm here? I stayed silent, watching him without a word. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a set of documents sealed with red wax. The Knighton Enterprises seal. Since you left New York? I've been watching everything, he said, his eyes stern. I know Ethan altered your contract. My heart raced. You knew too? I didn't just know. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. I saw the whole thing. My eyes widened, shock mingling with fear. You? Knew all along? Even made a mistake, thinking I was just a powerless old man. He smirked. But you know, Savannah, the ruthless ones are often the most careless. He handed me the documents. Open it. With trembling hands, I broke the seal, unfolding each page. It was the original contract. The actual contract I had drafted, with every clause intact and every figure accurate. This is the contract you submitted to the system before Ethan tampered with it, Grandpa explained. I backed it up before he made any changes. And this? He pulled another sheet from the briefcase. Is the server transaction log. It records every edit Ethan made at 2 a.m, 2 days before the board meeting. I held the paper, unable to look away from the bolded lines. Ethan Eck Knighton, 92603 AMM. I kept all the evidence, he said, his eyes sharp. But now is not the time to expose everything. You need to stay calm and prepare carefully. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to keep my anger in check. What do you want me to do? He leaned back, folding his arms. I built Knighton Enterprises from nothing. Everything your father and Ethan have now is because of me. But now, I see that I handed power to the wrong people. He leaned closer. Savannah, you're the only one I trust. But to take down Ethan, you need a flawless cover. A new identity, a new company. Let them think you've given up, that you no longer care about Knighton Enterprises. I straightened my posture, fully aware that this was my one chance to reclaim everything. What do you want me to do? You're going to start a new company, he said, his voice firm. A company that Ethan and your father would never suspect is connected to you. I'll provide the initial funding and introduce you to some old connections to get you started. I frowned. A maritime company? He nodded. Exactly. Phoenix Maritime Solutions. You'll operate under that name, and you'll be based here in Boston, far away from Ethan's reach. Demix Maritime. I repeated the name, feeling a fire ignite in my chest. You won't just be running a shipping company, he said, his voice cold and calculating. You'll be collecting information. Everything related to Knighton Enterprises, to Ethan, to every shady deal he's orchestrating. I've heard rumors that Ethan is using the maritime division to launder money through international shipments. If we gather enough evidence, we can take him down, I said, my eyes blazing. He nodded, his gaze fierce. You're the only one who can do it, Savannah. Prove to them that they were wrong to underestimate you. I stood up, eyes set with determination. Grandpa, I won't let you down. He placed a firm hand on my shoulder, a gentle smile forming, though his eyes remained as sharp as a hawk's. You don't just need to win, Savannah. You need to crush them. Make sure they never dare to pull this stunt again. I looked out the window, the Boston skyline still shrouded in fog. But inside me, a fire had been lit. Phoenix, the symbol of rebirth. And I would rise from the ashes they left behind. The early morning in Boston was cold and misty. The small office building sat modestly amidst a bustling industrial district, but inside, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Savannah, there's an email from Pacific Logistics. Olivia, my assistant, entered with a thick file. She was the first person I hired, a sharp, smart young woman who never hesitated to work day and night. Good. Bring it to the conference room, I said, eyes still glued to the computer screen. Phoenix Maritime Solutions had only been operating for a year, but we had already made significant waves in the shipping industry. From a no-name startup, we had rapidly built a reputation for taking on complex shipping routes that the major players overlooked. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning the dashboard displaying shipping data from major ports like New York, Miami, and Houston. Every shipment, every contract was monitored closely by me. I wasn't just trying to make Phoenix Maritime Solutions successful. I was using it as a tool to track every move Ethan made at Knighton Enterprises. Avi, Savannah, Olivia's voice called from the conference room. Pacific Logistics wants to meet with you. They have a major contract that needs urgent handling. I nodded, standing up and heading into the conference room. Inside the room, a middle-aged man in a black suit was waiting. He introduced himself as Raymond Liu, CEO of Pacific Logistics. His sharp eyes scanned me from head to toe, as if assessing every small detail. I heard you're the best when it comes to handling difficult contracts, Raymond said, his tone calm. I just don't back down from a challenge, I replied, not blinking. Raymond smirked, pushing a file toward me. Here's a list of goods that need to be shipped from the Port of New York to Singapore. We contacted Knighton Enterprises, but they couldn't handle the volume in such a short time frame. I opened the file, carefully reviewing each page. This is a substantial volume, I said, eyes skimming the numbers. If Knighton Enterprises takes this contract, they'll have to allocate all their resources to it, meaning other contracts will face delays. Exactly. Raymond nodded. And I heard, you have a way to handle it without involving Knighton. I smiled, closing the file. We can take this contract, but in return, I want exclusive shipping rights for Pacific Logistics for the next 2 years. Raymond leaned back, narrowing his eyes. You're not just after one contract. I want Knighton Enterprises' entire client network, I said firmly. If we sign this deal, I won't just solve your problem. I'll also ensure Knighton loses one of its biggest clients. Raymond laughed. I like the way you think. A few days later, the contract with Pacific Logistics was signed. It was the first step in my long-term plan. Every move had to be calculated, leaving no room for error. I spent the following weeks solidifying our client network, building a loyal and reliable team. Olivia worked tirelessly, becoming my most trusted right hand. But I knew I needed someone who could monitor Ethan's shady deals without being detected. And that person showed up one Saturday afternoon. I was sitting in my office, the sunset casting a warm glow through the window, when the phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Oh, Savannah, long time no see. The voice made me sit up straight. It was Lucas Hayes, the former head of IT at Knighton Enterprises. The one Ethan fired after he discovered a suspicious transaction? Lucas, I heard you're building a pretty strong shipping company out in Boston, Lucas said, his tone laced with a hint of mischief. And I heard you're looking for someone who knows how to extract data without leaving a trace. I gripped the phone tighter, eyes fixed on the computer screen. What do you want, Lucas? To help you, he said. And to get back at Ethan, I leaned back in the chair, a sly smile forming on my lips. Lucas wasn't just a tech expert. He was the only one who knew how to get into Knighton Enterprises' internal server without being detected. Fine, I said, my voice steady. I'll give you everything you need. But in return, I want every piece of transaction data on Ethan from the past 3 years. Lucas laughed. Savannah, I won't just give you the data. I'll show you what Ethan has really been hiding. I hung up, eyes staring out at the busy street below. Phoenix Maritime Solutions was no longer just a small player in the shipping industry. Step by step, I was expanding my network, gathering information, building my arsenal. And when the time was right, I would take Ethan down. Not just with financial power, but with everything I knew. That morning, the sky over Boston was ominously gray. Cold gusts of wind swept through the skyscrapers, carrying the chill of a fateful day. I was sitting in my office at Phoenix Maritime Solutions, eyes glued to the computer screen. Transaction data from Knighton Enterprises was still displayed clearly on the monitor. Data that Lucas had managed to collect after months of quietly infiltrating the system. The phone rang. It was Olivia. "Savannah." Her voice was shaky. "Mr. James, My heart pounded. "What happened to Grandpa?" "He passed away this morning at the hospital, a stroke." The world around me seemed to slow down. My hand trembled, nearly dropping the phone. Grandpa, the only one who stood by me, who helped me prepare every step to reclaim what was rightfully mine. And now, he was gone. "The funeral is tomorrow," Olivia continued. "The entire Knighton family will be there, and there will be a will reading." The will reading. No more words were necessary. I knew exactly what it meant. This was the moment Ethan had been waiting for. The moment he believed he would finally gain control of Knighton Enterprises. And I, the one who had been disowned by the family, would appear among them, like a ghost. The next day, I stood at the entrance of the Grand Cathedral in New York. The towering wooden doors loomed above, and inside, hundreds of people whispered and murmured. I walked in one step at a time. No one in the family looked at me. My mother, Victoria, sat beside Ethan, her eyes red but her face emotionless. Ethan wore a black suit, his eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction when he saw me. "Thought you'd disappeared for good," he whispered as I walked past. Did nothing, eyes fixed straight ahead at Grandpa's casket. The ceremony proceeded in tense silence. Every prayer felt like a knife to my heart. Grandpa lay there, unable to say a word. No longer a protector, no longer a guide. After the ceremony, everyone gathered at the lawyer's office, where Grandpa's will would be read. The room was spacious but stifling. Ethan sat at the head of the table, hands folded, a confident smirk on his face. Beside him, my mother folded her arms, lips pressed tight as if she were bracing for the best news of her life. I sat at the far end of the table, eyes cold, scanning every face. Mr. Wallace, Grandpa's lawyer, stood up, opening the envelope containing the will. Every word he spoke echoed in the room, each syllable landing like a hammer. "I, James Knighton, leave all personal assets including real estate, stocks, and investment funds to my only son, Charles Knighton." Ethan smiled, eyes sliding over to me with a triumphant glint. "I also leave my entire antique collection to my wife, Victoria Knighton." My mother gripped Ethan's hand, unable to hide her glee. But then Mr. Wallace's voice dropped, his tone grave. "And regarding Knighton Enterprises?" The room fell silent. Ethan straightened, a victorious grin spreading across his face. "I leave the entire controlling stake of Knighton Enterprises, including 55% of the company shares and direct executive authority, to my only granddaughter." All eyes turned to Ethan. His face was frozen. Savannah Knighton. The air seemed to solidify. Ethan shot up from his chair, his eyes blazing as if someone had just thrown a bucket of ice water in his face. "What? Is this some kind of joke?" My mother's mouth hung open, her eyes wide with horror. "No, this can't be. Ethan is the rightful heir. Savannah was disowned." Mr. Wallace remained unfazed by the chaos around him. He placed another set of documents on the table. "James Knighton left a letter for everyone." All eyes turned to the stack of papers. Mr. Wallace opened it, his voice clear and unwavering as he read. "Ethan, you were once my greatest hope. But I realized that your ambition was only to seize power, not to build something meaningful. You deceived, manipulated, and even harmed your sister to get what you wanted. Savannah, you are the only one I trust to lead Knighton Enterprises through the storm. You are not only a builder, but someone who understands the true essence of this family. You were pushed out of the company without cause. Now it is time for you to return. Knighton Enterprises, from this moment forward, belongs to you. The room erupted in murmurs, but none could drown out the furious, labored breathing of Ethan. He spun around, his eyes wild as he glared at me. What did you do? What did you say to Grandpa? I sat still, my hands clenched under the table, but my gaze remained calm. I didn't have to say anything. Grandpa knew everything on his own. Ethan slammed his hand down on the table. No, this isn't over. I won't let you get away with this. I stood up, locking eyes with him. Ethan, this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. The main conference room at Knighton Enterprises was thick with tension. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his hands gripping the armrests, his face ashen, as if all the blood had drained from his body. Across from him was me, the one he thought he had completely removed from the game. But now, I stood before him, holding the reins of Knighton Enterprises as per my grandfather's will. Let's begin the meeting, I said, my gaze sweeping over the faces in the room. Every department head, every board member was present. Livia stepped forward, placing a laptop on the conference table and connecting it to the large screen. This is what I want everyone to see, I said, my voice calm but firm. The screen lit up with a video. The footage was black and white but crystal clear. It was a recording from the security camera in Knighton Enterprises' IT office on the night the contract was altered. The timestamp read 2:03 OEMS. In the footage, a figure appeared. Ethan Knighton. Every eye in the room turned to him. Ethan sat rigidly, eyes wide as he stared at the screen. In the video, Ethan was seated at a computer, fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. Each line of text appeared clearly on the screen. Clause 12.2, Maritime Division Asset Valuation. He altered the figure from $85 million down to $42 million. The exact amount that I was accused of mishandling. I believe everyone has seen enough, I said, turning to face the board members. This is undeniable proof that Ethan Knighton intentionally altered the contract to force me out of the company. He abused his access to the server, manipulated the data, and created a fraudulent contract to destroy my reputation. One of the board members, Linda Fraser, who had always supported Ethan, spoke up, her voice trembling. Ethan, is this true? Ethan jumped to his feet, slamming his fists on the table. This is fabricated. She hired someone to impersonate me. This is a setup. I crossed my arms, staring him down. If I really staged this video, Ethan, then why are the original server logs still intact? Anyone can verify them at any time. Lucas, would you come in? The conference room door opened. Lucas Hayes, the man who had gathered all the data from the server, stepped in, holding a USB drive. Lucas plugged the USB into the laptop. Here is a complete copy of the server logs from that night. Every action was recorded in detail. The person who altered the contract was Ethan Knighton, using the highest level access account. Ethan stumbled back, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. No, this is a lie. She's manipulated everything. And this, Lucas continued, opening another file, is a recording of Ethan's phone call with a man named Victor Jansen, the one Ethan hired to conduct a series of phantom transactions, laundering money through maritime contracts. Victor is currently under investigation by the FBI and is prepared to testify against Ethan Knighton. The room exploded with whispers. Board members exchanged worried glances. I stepped forward, staring directly at Ethan. Ethan, you didn't just try to destroy me. You embezzled company funds to launder money. You betrayed Grandpa, betrayed Dad, and betrayed everyone who ever believed in you. Ethan slumped back into his chair, his face pale. No. I just wanted to take back what was supposed to be mine. Everything you ever had was because of Grandpa, I said, my voice ice cold. But now, you have nothing. Linda Fraser stood up, looking at the other board members. I propose an immediate vote to remove Ethan Knighton from all management positions at Knighton Enterprises. One by one, hands went up. Every single one in favor. The decision is unanimous, Linda said, turning to Ethan. You are stripped of all power in the company effective immediately. Ethan's head dropped to the table, his eyes staring blankly at nothing. I'll sue you all, he muttered. I won't let you get away with this. I leaned down, whispering close to his ear. You had a chance to do the right thing, Ethan. Instead, you tried to destroy me. Now you will pay the price. I straightened up, turning to the board members. As of today, I will officially assume control of Knighton Enterprises. We will begin a full restructuring of the company. Traitors will be removed, the loyal will be rewarded. Everyone in the room stood up, erupting in applause. Ethan was dragged away, his hands cuffed behind his back by 2 security guards. He twisted his neck to look at me, eyes burning with hatred. Savannah, you'll pay for this. I remained silent, eyes fixed on the door as they pulled him out. Always going to rebuild this empire? In the way Grandpa had always wanted. The New York sky had turned a stormy gray, thick clouds blocking out the last light of day. Inside the CEO's office on the top floor of Knighton Enterprises, I sat alone behind the oak desk that once belonged to Ethan. The room remained cold and lifeless, the expensive furniture untouched and soulless. Only one thing had changed: the framed glass placed right in the center of the desk. Inside that glass was the altered contract Ethan had used to frame me. The forged numbers, the meticulously edited phrases, every line a constant reminder of what I had to endure to be here. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and let my body relax. The ticking of the wall clock echoed steadily, but my mind was drifting into another space, a space filled with memories and unspoken words. The phone rang. I opened my eyes and looked at the screen, an unknown number. I pressed the answer button. Hello? There was no reply. Just soft, familiar music, the melody Grandpa used to play while sitting in his study. Clair de Lune by Debussy. My heart pounded, my fingertips unconsciously gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? The music abruptly stopped. A deep, warm voice echoed through the line, as if coming from a distant place. You did well, Savannah. It was Grandpa's voice. Impossible. He had been gone for months. Grandpa? I asked, my voice trembling, tears rolling down my cheeks. You fought harder than I ever imagined. His voice continued, calm and steady. I knew you wouldn't give up. You did the right thing, not just to protect yourself, but to safeguard this family's legacy. I covered my mouth, trying to hold back the sobs. How are you talking to me? This is a recording, he explained. I asked Lucas to send it to you once everything was over. Lucas? Of course. Lucas had been quietly preparing everything without me knowing. Savannah? Grandpa's voice grew softer, warm yet stern. You've taken back what was rightfully yours. But power isn't just something to possess. It's something that must be controlled and guided, with both intelligence and compassion. I swallowed, my eyes wide as I stared out the window. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. You've faced Ethan and won. But this isn't the end, he continued. You will have more enemies. Those I once trusted will now turn against you. They will do everything to drag you down, to make you the new target. Be careful, Savannah. Remember this. The most dangerous enemy is not the one in front of you. but the one standing behind you. I closed my eyes, feeling a chill sweep through the room. And finally, his voice lowered to a near whisper, I am proud of you. You are not just the heir to Knighton Enterprises. You are the only one who can change the future of this family. Don't let them defeat you, Savannah. Never. The soft strains of Clair de Lune played again, gentle but haunting. The line went dead, and the screen displayed the words, Call ended. I placed the phone back on the desk, my chest heaving with unsteady breaths. Grandpa's last message? A recording, but it felt as if he were right here, standing behind me, resting his hand on my shoulder, looking at me with those warm yet stern eyes. I turned around and stared at the framed glass on the desk. The forged contract, the final remnant of Ethan's power play, a man who would stop at nothing to seize control, but ultimately became the victim of his own ambition. I picked up the frame, examining every line of text. It was a testament to betrayal, to ruthlessness, to insatiable greed. But now, it was also a symbol of my strength, patience, and unwavering resolve. Savannah Knighton, once branded as a failure and outcast, now stood stronger than ever. I set the frame back down, took a deep breath, and lifted my head high. Outside the window, the rain over New York had ceased. The lights from the skyscrapers reflected off the wet streets, sparkling like thousands of diamonds dancing in the night. And somewhere far away, I knew Grandpa was watching, smiling with pride. Savannah's story is a powerful testament to the strength of patience and relentless determination. Betrayed by her family and pushed out of the company, she not only rose again but rebuilt her career from the ground up. With her grandfather's silent support, Savannah exposed the truth, took down the traitor, and reclaimed control of Knighton Enterprises. It's a valuable lesson in refusing to let failure define you, and instead using the pain to fuel a stronger, more resilient comeback. What do you think about Savannah's fight to reclaim justice? Has she truly won, or is this just the beginning of a new battle? Share your thoughts and stay tuned for more intense and emotional family stories.